So this one for the both of you, so a founder has decided to, go out and start looking for VC funding. Like, what do you think, Ashley, that a founder should know or should really think about before doing so?
Yeah, I mean, I think to my point earlier, do you want to be in business with this person? You also have to go in knowing that, when VCs are setting your terms, they are the terms that you're going to raise that round on. Their goal is a percentage. They're not looking at your company and saying, doing a simple formula of, oh, let's do 10x revenue or whatever you have in your head. They're going to say, I want 10 to 20%. And this is how much we're going to put in. So this is what your valuation is. So going in knowing that, you're not, you don't get to decide your valuation. You can certainly turn down a term sheet,
Sure.
But it's not in your control in that case, what your company is going to be valued at. I think also you should know that when you put a VC on your cap table, there is going to be some pressure and expectations set by those VCs. You're still, the founders are still the founders. But if your growth is not at the rate the VC wants to see, they're going to let you know. And they might even, maybe a year, 2, 3 years down the road, they might even suggest, well, you're, as the CEO, you're just not cutting it anymore. We're going to bring someone else in.
Yeah.
So it's important to know this is a business relationship, and the goal is for them to make money.
An extraordinary outcome, in fact.
An extraordinary outcome. And so they're going to do everything they can. They are capitalists. They're going to do everything they
That's
can.
the capital in venture capital.
Yes.
Yeah. It's important, I think, for people to understand this, that it's jet fuel.
Mm-hmm.
It is not coal. They're not putting a couple of lumps in coal and saying, let's heat the house for the next day. They're saying, let's put you on the tip of the rocket and let's fill the rocket with jet fuel and then press the button that ignites it and try to get escape velocity. And so you're going to pull some G's getting into space. It is an unnatural act to have venture capital. We started out saying this is 99+% of businesses are not venture funded businesses, nor should they be. And if you choose to do the jet fuel, you have to be very comfortable that the person you're going to have on that rocket ship with you, the VC, is somebody you want to work for 10 years, and that you're willing to do the incredibly unnatural task of having non-organic growth. Some portion of your growth will be organic, but they want the growth to be not organic. They want it to be superhuman, which means they're giving you millions of dollars, and they're not giving you that to gain interest on it. I remember when first time I raised money, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this couple of $1 million? Should I put it in stocks or mutual funds or bonds? And they're just like, Jason, we didn't give you the money to be a bond manager. Build your company, put it in your bank account. We don't care if you're getting interest on it or not. Right. And I had to think that through. And then at one point we had over $10 million in our bank account. So I was like, okay, put this percentage of it in bonds. And I remember I was like, wow, we're getting like 600,000. The bonds were doing incredible. We got $600,000 in interest on our bonds. It was actually like a meaningful amount on our burn every month. It was like a third of our burn was being paid for by the bond revenue. I was like, that's kind of cool, right? That is not the standard case. And you are going to, the VCs on Sand Hill Road here in Silicon Valley, and all the advice we have here is from Silicon Valley. We can't speak to China, India, Europe. In China, I actually can speak to it. It might be double the valuations. But you might also be doing personal guarantees. In Europe, it's going to be half the valuations. Outside of Silicon Valley, it's going to be somewhere between half and 2/3 of the valuation, I think, here. It's a good rule of thumb. But they're going to want to own 20%. So we know that. Mm-hmm. So when you're an entrepreneur, and let's say you have that $1 million in revenue, $2 million in revenue run rate, and you're qualifying, you're in the running for a venture round, you're picking who? The percentage has already been picked. It's going to be 25%. Let's say, or 20%. We'll make it easy for math. So now it's who are you going to give 20% to and for how much? So how much, and then there's terms. The terms, you want to go standard. So we can kind of put that aside. You want standard terms, and so does the VC. So you want standard terms. Now you're picking who and then how much money. Well, if you've got $2 million in revenue and they're going to put in, and they're going to want 20%, and you want a $10 million or $15 or $20 million valuation, you can just do the back of the MML. It's going to be $2 million or $3 million or $4 million. And just get comfortable with that and know it when you're going out. Yep. When's it too soon time to go out to talk to VCs? If a VC wants to meet with you, should you just take the meeting? Is there any downside to doing that?
Yeah. So I think one piece would be, it's a distraction from, if you're not fundraising and that is not the focus at the moment, it is potentially distracting. It's taking away from the core business. You also want to try to understand the motivation of that VC. Are they, looking at a whole category and planning on investing in perhaps one company, but want to fish out some information from you?
So that means an associate emailed you and is like, hey, inside.com,
Yep.
we're really interested in email newsletters, but they're actually looking at the Skim and Axios.
Right.
And we're just the third place in that race, and they just want to get information from us.
Yep. Just perhaps they want to benchmark some metrics so they can understand, how do they compare?
Should I do that? Should I go there and give them my metrics if an associate is emailing me? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think in general the answer would be no, to be protective of that sort of information. But I think certain founders may find that transparency has its benefits. I think Buffer is a really interesting example of this.
Buffer app.
Yeah, Buffer app. So you can actually just Google Buffer metrics and you can see how much revenue do they make on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What is their ARR? And so there is...
And their churn. They just
and their
basically
churn, yeah,
have their metrics out there laid bare.
Yeah. It's just,
And he says he gets like 10 investors a day calling.
yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. So, that's, I would say, not the norm for sure. I think in general, we talk about this as well. It's a zero-sum game, and so you have to be careful. So if an investor ultimately invests in a competitor, that means that's less money potentially for you. So not trying to give a VC fuel to ultimately invest in somebody else by
My trick when I got a lot of these analyst calls after Sequoia had invested in Inside back in the day was I'd say, we're not fundraising right now, but if you are in Santa Monica and you want to come by for a cup of coffee, let me know. So it's kind of great. So I'm like, oh, can we jump on a call? And I'd say, we don't have time for calls, but if you're in Santa Monica and you want to go for a walk, have a cup of coffee and meet the team, we're happy to do that. And they'd say, oh, well, I was wondering how, and I just say, yeah, we're in Santa Monica. If you find yourself in Santa Monica, I just repeat myself over and over again.
So if they come to Santa Monica, they're asking you questions. How open are you? How do you tell me, Jason, tell me about the 5 newest newsletters. How many subscribers are you at? What are you seeing in open rates?
Yeah. So information that is publicly available, I would just put out there. Mm-hmm. And then you have 2 choices when you have information that you don't want out there. You could say, well, that's a little bit of our secret sauce. We don't really want that information out there. We don't share that information outside of our board. Or you can say, that's what I used to do, I would give sometimes a little bit of the opposite information. If something's going very well, I'd say, we're figuring that out. We haven't figured that out yet. They're like, oh, what about, you were saying, how do they grow or something? What are your tips and tricks for growing these things?
Sure.
And I would just say something like, end of the day, it's about quality. You can do all kinds of the standard tricks that you find on Medium or growth hacking, newsletters or blogs. All that stuff could possibly work. It's really, at the end of the day, about quality. It's what you put on the plate. That's what makes the restaurant successful. Now, that may not be, in fact, the case. So I would just be a little bit sort of filibustering, like a presidential candidate in a debate. I would filibuster a bit or just tell them straight up, yeah, we have a secret strategy that we do. We don't share that playbook, but yeah, we have a playbook for that. And then you have to also know who you're dealing with. So if it's an associate, sometimes associates can have a lot of influence.
Sure.
And other times they could be doing what you're talking about, which is just collecting data, and their boss is saying, just get me the churn rates of the top 10 SaaS companies. I want to make a chart and put Slack on that chart against Yammer and Salesforce, and how quickly is it growing or something like that. And I don't think you want to participate in those kind of things. And I don't think you're not under an obligation to get on the phone. I just had actually a journalist, the organization, one of the journalism organizations, a very well-known one, was like, hey, we're doing a report on email newsletters. We're hoping to talk to you because Inside's a leader in that category. And I was like, yeah, thanks. I'm on deadline for my book right now. I can't talk to you. Well, it's very simple. I just got to ask 5-6 questions. And I'm like, we're really not interested in educating the market. I just said to the person, I said, candidly, we're not interested in educating the market at what the opportunity is. I thought, well, it'd be good for you. And I was like, yeah, we're going to pass for now. I just said that over email. We're going to pass for now. Thank you for the opportunity. You're not under the obligation to even reply. So a lot of times people will email me like, can you tell me when Uber's going public? Or, is Travis going to be? Yeah, exactly. Or can you tell me if, is Travis coming back to the, could be CEO or something, and I just don't even reply. Where I have a standard thing that I cut and paste that says, I don't speak for my companies, the CEOs do.